Welcome back to Lit versus Genre. I am Steve,
Jeff.
and here we are. Jeff, when I saw this chapter, I just couldn't help but start singing Kansas when I
Understandable.
heard this.
Remember we talked about that some authors actually put soundtracks to their books.
Right.
Clearly, this is a not so subtle hint as to what you should be listening to while you read this chapter.
Do you think that's legit? Like he wanted you to think
I want it to be.
Kansas during
I
this?
want it to be.
Yeah, well, it does get said. Tom says it at the end. I noticed. But yeah, and pretty apropos, I guess, of this chapter since our heroes get scattered during this chase.
Yes,
So,
yes.
and some other things happen. Okay, I before we start, I was like, oh, I don't think I have much to say about this chapter, but there is
Sorry.
elephant, one major elephant in the room as far as this chapter goes, and you know what it is.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like so. There's the one that I would think would be a standard one, but thinking about the last 19 chapters with you, I feel like maybe it's something else now. So I've got two guesses.
Okay. Well, we'll see. You'll have to tell me when we get there. I mean, I think there's just one major
I'll
crazy
say them
thing
first.
about this chapter.
So for me, the major thing is that this is the first time I get to see an alternate perspective besides Rand's.
Right.
So like from a storytelling structural perspective, that to me is like the biggest deal.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, but then there was the other possibility of now we have split off with your boy Tommy, and so I
Oh
thought
yeah,
maybe
we're stuck with
yeah.
him. Yeah.
Now it's with Tom and Red. Two
Well,
people you love and then Red.
yeah, I know the worst too. But the thing that makes that bearable, Jeff, is that now that we are in separate perspectives, I will have some reprieve. I'm guessing as well from the Matt and
Did,
Tom show.
and did you take a peek at the next chapter to like see how
Yeah, I
soon?
did. So I see whose perspective
Yeah.
we're in now. So yeah, let's hold off until we get to it because
Sure. Sure.
it's wild and I have some things to say about it. But here
Yeah.
right,
No.
you knew I would. But here right at the beginning, um, for the 800th time, I don't know what Moraine has to do for these people not to be hating on Moraine. Uh, as
It's,
much
it's 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 a deep prejudice.
it's
Deep
just
prejudice.
it's deep, man, but not so deep that like 4 paragraphs later he's like suddenly missing her
Well,
very much.
that's what I think's so great about it, right? Like, I mean, I feel like we've talked about that before, where they will, as the country bumpkins, have this preconceived notion, and then relatively soon later, it'll be kind of like turned on its head, Um,
Immediately.
right? I feel like that's what we're getting with this, which is a nice commentary on it. I feel.
I was a little surprised how unexplained this was. And before you ask, yes, I went to the glossary. Uh,
Okay. Okay.
it was not
Cool.
there,
Oh,
but
it's not.
no.
What?
Which is kind of weird, I think, because unless this doesn't feel very spoiler to me to kind of elaborate on this thing a little bit. Um,
You can tell if I sort of like that it's. I don't know. I mean, she does basically say what it is right here. So,
I mean, unseeing, unthinking. If it touches you, you'll die. It's just the evil. It's just the embodiment of the evil.
that is the direction we're going with it here. Yeah,
That
for
just
sure.
doesn't even. I'm not even. I'm trying to think back of what the story was about more death and like what kind of wrecked the city so bad. And like
It
that.
like folded in on itself, basically, like the evil that destroyed itself. So yeah, it's like the embodiment. I mean, again, I'm just going off of this. I'm not like pulling from future books.
Yeah.
I just it seems like it's an embodiment of the evil that's like not quite sentient, right? I like the description of a worm, and It just is sort of like there, but then as it gets closer, it does, right? As we see later with the Trollocs and stuff. So it kind of shows us why the Trollocs were so afraid.
Oh, it's said right here. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so we did already say Mashadar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they fled the borderlands.
Wait.
Man, the story time. I was not paying enough attention during the story time last chapter.
Well, no, I mean, I gotta say, I mean, I know this is
That
last
I'm
chapter.
going back. Well, notice I'm doing it now that I have to talk to you about it. But, like, I
No,
don't know, like, yeah, I probably would have just kept going.
no, I love that you're going back. Like, this is what we talked about before of that reading experience. And I was like, oh, yeah, no, I love it. Like, I'll turn back pages and figure out, like, what it was, you know? And that was that difference of a reading experience of starting versus going through that we talked about in some early chapters. So, no, I like that you're going back. What also still trips me up, or not trips me up, but I think it's funny, is Moraine saying here, this story is too long to tell in Phil, so I'll just give you a fragment, right? And it's still, like, in terms of reading, it's still like, right?
Right.
Which I think is
So I guess this is why my memory is kind of shaky on it, because we don't really get the explanation. How Tharn Sarkar came to win Ardahal back to the Second Covenant, and oh right, because there was this like kind of creepy, like Mordeth was basically like the creepy guy influencing the king of this place, right? Which felt very Lord of the Rings to me as well, because there's that like creepy guy who's like obviously evil, influencing that one king.
right.
And then we don't learn how I highlighted this, but we didn't talk about last week how Prince Carr came to be called Carr One Hand. Okay, I can maybe imagine how that may have happened. Fled alone to the borderlands with more assassins as healed. He met Rey, married her, blah blah blah.
I feel like must have been brought up earlier.
Found the
Because
gates.
there's a line right at the end about Mashadar, but where does that?
Yeah, well, like there was he was just, Mordeth was just whispering poison in his ear, and then like everything goes to crap.
Right.
Like the prince escapes, even though like everything else sucks. He comes back, but by that time the whole place is just empty. Mashadar waits still, hungering, and I highlighted it probably because I'm like I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
wondering. I want to do like a word search. Like, did Mashadar appear before? Is that like the very first time she names the like evil power,
mm-hmm.
right? Um, yeah, because it's like the shadow that waits. Um, so yeah, I don't actually know if that's the first instance of Mashadar, and that's like because it is interesting that she doesn't specifically say, and then Mashadar was created or something. It's just like, and Mashadar waits. It's like, what's Mashadar? But yeah, it seems like it's the evil. So
Right.
yeah,
Weird. Okay. So it's basically a fog monster.
Fogwart, good old Fogwart.
and like I was also like, how did they let themselves get so far behind Lan and Moraine that like fog monster was able to get in between them? But
Just thinking,
yeah, he's sneaky, fog monster. He'll sneak up on you.
yeah,
So then
Chaff.
they all have to. Well, they don't all have to separate. The one group has to go down along fog monster, get to the river. But then
Right.
the Trollocs all attack. And I did like this part where he's like, "I know the way." Wait, where does he say? He's like,
People are
"Follow
like,
me," and everybody says, "Follow
yeah,
me."
that was one of my favorite parts in the chapter. It just felt so real. Like, of course, everyone's like, with me. Now that they're all going in different directions.
Yeah.
Right.
So then they get separated. Um, Rand's. This part was pretty cool. I actually did like the prose in this one part where the Mashadar eats. I
Yeah.
mean, quote unquote. I guess I'm saying eats because he says eating the howls, which I really liked, like eating the sound. I thought that was like a good,
Yeah.
metaphor or whatever. This sentence I did not like as much. Like all the hornets in the world digging into Rand's ear with all the fear that could exist. Again, I think it's just too much to stop after all the hornets in the world digging into Rand's ears. I feel like that's enough.
Yeah, with all the fear. Well, what I liked about that is it shows that the Myrddraal can be afraid, um, which I feel like sometimes we don't see with the evil side, right? Like I mean, it's Trollocs, I guess we've seen it. But yeah, I mean,
I
it does feel
guess.
like with all the double E alls, right? Like all the Hornets with all the fear, right?
Yeah, I didn't like that
Um,
repetition there. I didn't think that worked. And
yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like that's what's catching you. So I think you could just remove one of those, and you could get the same sort of idea across. Because I do think the fear aspect is important. Like I remember when I was just reading this, that fear part hit me, and it was interesting to me that like this super evil creature could represent all the fear in the world. So that was neat.
hmm. Yeah, I kind of like just all the hornets in the world, and then you like get the fear. Like you get like that's what you're hearing if they're howling like that. But anyway, so now he's sad that Egwene isn't there. Well, you should have thought about that sooner, buddy. Okay. So then what happens? He finds Matt, almost
Yeah.
like takes his head off, but
Oh, that's
stops
good.
himself in time. And then they're
Thankfully,
like, okay, we're gonna go down to the river. Um,
Mhm.
and as they're going, suddenly Tom appears, and Tom's being
So,
chased by like a bunch more.
right.
And then for the second time in the whole novel, we get white space. And then
Cool
boom,
moment.
right into Perrin.
Right there.
Okay, so tell me, Jeff, when you were reading, I don't know if you remember this back in the day, but when you were reading this for the first time, what did you think about this?
Joy.
Joy.
Pure joy.
Had
I
you
mean,
read lots of things that were like multiple, like rotating POV?
good question. Um, Not, it's tough because like this and Game of Thrones are like the two big multiple POV like epic fantasies that you know are are sort of the foundation of so many other things that have come after. Um, so I don't know if I had, but I'm considering how much I love multiple POVs. You know, obviously for me to definitively remember how I was feeling decades ago, but I'm pretty sure I was excited because I mean it is crazy. We're 316 pages of the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then we're getting a different perspective, but this is the whole advantage of third person, right? Is that you like can. So yeah, no, um, I've got a guess. I was excited by this.
All right. Yeah, I mean, you just said, okay, this is third person, so you can. You can. I guess, like, the discussion I want to bring up here is, like, just the idea of. I've heard this phrase a lot, and for a long time it very confused me, this phrase, like, what it meant. But you'll hear lots of people talk about how you teach the reader how to read
Oh, right, yeah.
your book. And I was like, what in God's name are you actually talking about?
Right,
Teach
right,
how
right.
to read.
It is the expectation management.
Right, exactly. So like the idea is that sure you can do anything, but you set up certain expectations in the reader, and if you are then going to violate them, it can be done to like really great effect, but it
Right.
almost has to have an effect, and it has to feel like it's purposeful in some way. Otherwise, it's kind of a like, what the fuck moment. Like, it's
Sure.
gonna be inevitable that the reader's gonna go like, why is this happening?
Right,
Because
right.
you've specifically taught them to expect something else. Like you've done that. Nobody else has done that. You, the writer, have set this expectation. And so, like, yeah, right here, I don't dislike it, and I maybe do prefer, we jump around into everybody else's heads. And I guess certainly plot-wise, if you're going to have them all suddenly break up, that makes sense as a time to do it. But there are two things that still were weird about this that I was like, okay, Perrin is who we jump into.
Right.
And then, like, I don't know. Like, I thought of this chapter, I was like, if this Perrin part wasn't in here, nothing really changes, like, about this chapter. We go directly back to Rand, like, right where we left off. And,
Yeah.
And it felt extremely random. Like, it felt like, I don't know, not planned, not designed, just kind of off the cuff sort of thing. So, and I don't mean to say this like I dislike it. I do think I like it, but I think it was weird.
Why not like its own chapter or something?
Yeah, why not its own chapter? We could even like kind of, I don't even think it matters how Perrin got to that point. Like, we could just check in later and, oh, Perrin's in the river, or on the other side of the river, and he kind of, thinks back on how he got there, and we're caught up. It just wasn't, like, super consequential. Yeah, we see Egg for a second, but then we lose her again.
Right.
And yeah, I'm just not sure, like, what this little interlude was doing here.
I almost wonder if it's training the reader to then be ready for the next chapter, in a way.
Yeah, maybe. Like, I don't know if I would have liked it better just jumping directly into Nynaeve's head in the next chapter, because then there's a chapter break, as far as a white space break.
Like, I just wonder if this is meant to make it easier, right? Because, like you were saying, it's this, we go back to Rand. So it's almost like kind of testing the waters, as if a full, just the next chapter being someone new would be like, whoa, we've never seen that happen, right? So I do wonder if that was part of the rationale.
Maybe. I don't know if it lessens the shock
I'm not
of
sure
that
it does either.
or makes it feel weirder. Like, I was then, once we jumped to Perrin, I was like, oh, we're going to check in with everybody else now. No, we go right back to Rand, where we were. And so, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not going to make, like, too big a deal of it, but I just thought it was, like, an interesting illustration of that principle of teaching your readers how to read, and then when you are going to pull the rug out of that, I kind of get where then there's a lot of weight on that decision. Like, you really gotta, like, think about it carefully, because it is somewhat jarring. Of course, this is fiction, you can do whatever you want, but it's an interesting idea to think about, that, like, you teach somebody what to expect, you set up expectations, and if you're gonna violate them, you gotta be wielding that at least somewhat carefully.
Yeah, I do. I've been thinking about this a lot recently myself, because I just started posting a story on like a free site wrote, and it's the book that has like a million perspectives in it. And I was thinking like the same sort of idea, not to derail the conversation much about work, but
No.
not the point of this, but just the point of like what you're talking about, like the rationale of teaching, like what allows a reader to follow from one to the next without getting confused and try to get a sense of like, what the heck is this author doing, right?
Right.
So I would have loved to be a fly on the wall in this room and find out, maybe it's an interview somewhere, I just don't know. Was this all a plan by Robert Jordan to say like, I'm going to ease the reader in with obviously prologues you can do whatever you want, right? Like that's what the main point of a prologue is, to have a different time period or different person. But like, I'm going to ease the reader in with 300 pages of rants, right? To get them used to the world, get them used to these people. And then there's going to be this moment where they're all separated, and then we're going to start to follow the different people, right? And I wonder, I think that choice was made to make the book more accessible to people, as opposed to starting it out and being like, here's what Rand is doing, here's what Perrin's doing, here's what Matt's doing, so on and so on. And also, since they're all going in the same direction at this point, I don't think it really needs, in the first 300 pages, the different perspectives of the boys necessarily, because they're all moving in the same direction. You could, right, get different people's takes, right? I just wonder how purposeful that was, or if he went in and he was like, I want to show everyone different perspectives, like every chapter, and they were like, that's crazy, you can't do that, right? And then you got Ray Martin, right? Where I wanted to go back and double check the chapters. I've done it before, but I haven't done it recently. But I'm pretty sure it starts with like, I mean, obviously the prologue is its own thing with the
Right.
guards, wall, and everything. But then when you get into the initial chapters, it's the one family, right? So you're seeing sort of like the Stark family, and then we kind of branch from there, right?
Oh wait,
So
I'm
I,
sorry. You jumped to Game of Thrones. You're talking about how
yeah,
Game
yeah.
of
I was
Thrones
sorry.
did it.
I was just jumping to a contrast for
Right.
Game of Thrones, where we get the alternate perspectives every chapter, like immediately, right? Training your reader, like this is going to be the.
Right.
And so I think the thing that George R. R. Martin does to ease you in some is he starts with that like family, the Stark, and then sort of like builds from there, you know? Um, so yeah, no, I agree that it's a very interesting choice. This to like basically halfway through the book, decide on the split. It's fascinating that it is Perrin that we get right. That it is this just like almost a in the chapter bookended by Rand. Again, I think that was to ease the reader as opposed to they were feeling like just a new chapter where the person would be too much. But I do also get what you're saying. Like what besides just getting these people moving in a different direction, like couldn't we have just seen this parent flashback? Maybe you just wanted to write it in the moment. What I'm going to be interested to see is do they do this in the show, right? Obviously, in TV shows, we're so used to bouncing around to a million people's perspectives, or
Yeah.
in comic books, right? Super common. Um, but but with the show, it seems like very natural for them to do that. But I think they will because again, they've already said they're going to lean kind of more on Moraine, so I already feel like they're going to be doing some separation from the get-go to train the reader. So this will be a
Mm-hmm.
fascinating thing to kind of revisit to see how they handle it.
Yeah, because that structure, I mean, that's one of the things that just made Game of Thrones jump to television so easily. It's like you already had that soap opera structure that, like, oh, we're checking in on story A, now we're checking in on story B, now we're checking in on story C, which is what just like, television 1 hour dramas kind of want to do anyway.
Right.
So that always seemed kind of genius and ready made to it. Whereas, yeah, you're right. Like this doesn't. I wonder if they will go a little bit more wild with their adaptation. It doesn't seem like I've seen very little, but it doesn't seem like they're gonna do that. So like the beginning of the story, as you said, is all just very linear, and we're just following the same people. For this journey, so that kind of defies that sort of television-y, ooh, let's jump around and check in with different characters type thing.
Well, I'm wondering how much they may shorten the first 300 pages
Right.
and how much they like it's feasible. I don't know if they're going to pull from the prequel at all to be able to focus more on Rain or not.
Mm.
But yeah, so no, it totally, and it also kind of makes sense that I don't know if Martin was thinking about that, but he wrote for TV for quite some time.
Mm.
So or he was, thinking about that with the way he structured it. But anyway, yeah, no, obviously there's a huge chapter structurally because of this sudden, first time alternate perspective.
Yeah.
So,
I'll be interested to, like, when we get into it, how many perspectives we're gonna end up getting, because I wonder what is like the max that you can really do, and sort of be able to hold interest between them, because like even Game of Thrones, it was kind of interesting that it it felt like, you didn't get everybody, you just got like
yeah,
the people he picked, and to a certain extent the people he picked felt a little random, like we didn't get every Stark kid, right? Like
yeah, no.
I can't
Well,
remember which ones we got, but like there was like
they, well, it's funny you say that because they split it more evenly in the show. Like in the book, you never get Robb Stark,
right,
who's like the eldest, right?
right,
Who like becomes the king of the North, sort of like the Wolf King or whatever. Um, but in the show, there's a lot more focus on him. So yeah,
yeah, and I think that's judicious, right? I think like splitting the perspectives up much more than, I don't know, I can't even remember how many Game of Thrones they did, but more than 4 or 5. I feel like at a certain point you're going to be diluting yourself, as far as like the narrative threads.
Well, and the other danger is that it becomes too big, which happens,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what I mean by that is like, Game of Thrones, there were so many perspectives that in the later books, they had to like split it. Say, okay, this book, you're getting these people's perspectives. In this book,
Right.
you're getting these other people's
Right.
perspectives.
And then you have to wait a
But,
whole book to get back to him.
right,
Yeah, it seems
right.
like dicey, man.
Yeah, no, trust me, I hear that. Like, I've got seven, and I'm like,
Yeah.
like, how manageable is this, right? But yeah, no, I mean, I'm actually fascinated to see because I don't remember how many perspectives we get in book one. Like, I know how
Mm.
many perspectives mostly we get in the end, but not right now. So yeah, let's find out as
All
we keep
right.
reading.
Yeah, and I guess the only last thing I'll say is that it's interesting. You're like, I wonder how planned out he had that. To me, it feels very exploration writing. It feels like he kind of tapped out here, or maybe even to like create more interest for himself. He's like, man, I just can't stick with just Rands anymore. We need to do something else here. It just it has that kind of
I can believe
organic
that.
feeling of not being real designed, because I feel like you could have designed it in a way that maybe like my brain that's going like, oh, you taught me to read it this way. If you had planned to do that from the beginning, you might have designed it in a different way to teach me to expect that.
Yeah, I wonder how though, right? Like, if the decision is we're going to go one person perspective for the first half of the book, it feels like no matter what, it's going to be a shock. And then it's just like how to make that shock make sense. Like maybe if Rand had been knocked out and there was a person right beside him, and then we jump to like that person's head in the next chapter, or even a
Yeah.
break, right?
I guess
Or
I
maybe if we weren't going back to Rand. Like I'm just wondering in this particular style, if it seems almost impossible to train, you can only make the moment perhaps have greater clarity of the switch.
yeah, like I don't know if it would really. You're like you have this thesis of it eases us into it by doing a mid chapter like this. I don't know if it does. If like
I don't know
Rand
either.
Rand just
Maybe
ends up on a boat, with Tom and Matt, and then next chapter we were with somebody new. I feel like that's no more of a shock than randomly going to Perrin here, in the moment, or is that more of a shock than like, okay, so who do we have split up?
right.
I thought the whole time I was reading, I was like, okay, well, we've checked in on basically everybody except Nynaeve. And that felt weird. Like, okay, we hit parents so we could get Egg as well, and then
Right.
though I think like, and then at the end of this chapter, I just feel like there's going to be this whole other story with Egg and like what happened with
Yeah.
her, and how she either got out of it or is captured or something. So yeah, it
Yeah.
just felt very much like I don't know, like more of like
Yeah.
just okay, I'm just gonna do this than it
No,
being super thought out. But I could be completely wrong about that. I know this guy has planned out tons and
right.
tons and tons of things.
Yeah, I don't know. It is fascinating to think about. I mean, I would think that he planned that he'd eventually split perspectives, right? But you could be completely correct that the moment he just sort of felt it and did it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But to your point about like you feel as if there's going to be something about A, going to be something about E, I feel like this is the moment where the book sort of explodes to a degree
Mm.
in like possibilities, right? Because we finally have the boys of like Ran and Matt out of town and now going to just this destination alone where they can,
Mm.
well, I mean, obviously Tom's with them, right? But now they can sort of do whatever they want, whatever that means, right? And then you've got other people, who knows? Like Perrin's just like by himself, right? As you said, where is Egg? Where's Nynaeve? And obviously we're not quite as worried about probably Moraine or Land. They seem to be able to take care of themselves. But this is kind of the moment where we've just sort of flung the characters out into the world and scattered them like dust, right? Which is, I'm sure, the real meaning of like of the title. And I feel like this is the moment where the book is just like it yawns open with possibilities of them exploring the world and seeing what's going to happen. So I think it's kind of a very exciting midpoint chapter.
Yeah. A couple other notes here about this.
Steve's excited. Yeah.
Tom's suddenly coming through with like the mad knife skills, knife throwing skills.
You gotta have the knife, dude. This is a fantasy staple. Knife.
Oh, really? Is it?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's. I don't know. It's just something. Maybe it's because I love it so much that I just notice it in every book I read. But I feel like it did become a trope for a little bit of like, there's knife. And obviously, my first book has a knife throwing. Of course. But yeah, so it's awesome. We love knife throwing here at the fantasy.
All right. Well, I was surprised. I guess it's all that juggling training that would be his like the one thing he's really good at is throwing.
It actually makes sense. Yeah, unlike other knife throwing that just exists in other books, this actually has some rationale behind it because of his performance.
Okay, so I like that. So then there's this very lucky boat that's here that they jump onto. All these people kind of help them fight off these Trollocs, and they push off. This one dude tries to do this mad lie and say that like Rand hit him, even though Rand just kind of jumped on his face because he was sleeping. So that's pretty funny. Oh, I highlighted this. This is just gambler's fallacy right here, Rand. You haven't used up your luck. You have the same amount of luck every time. It's just odds, my friend. So
I feel like it's in there to help justify, but I also like what you're saying.
Oh, justify as like, yeah. Oh yeah, because not only they find this lucky ship, but it's also this kind of classic thing that I feel like I've seen in movies quite a bit, that you get hit by the one sail that you're not paying attention to.
Every time. Well, and what adds the mystery is Daman is like, I thought I told you to tie that down. And the dude's like, I did tie it down. And so it's like, well, we've seen the dude who says he tied it down live before, so it could be lying.
Yeah, that was my interpretation, that this guy like just took a nap instead of doing his job or whatever.
It's like, or is there something more going on here? So.
Oh dang, I didn't even question that. Okay. I should have learned by now to question everything.
Question everything.
Maybe he has magic luck powers, like Longshot from the X-Men. That would be cool. All right.
That was Domino, rather like.
Say that again?
That was Domino, rather like. Maybe I'm just thinking about.
No, she does too. I think. I don't know what.
I was thinking of the movie.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think there is also in the Marvel Universe yet another character besides those two that also has luck-based powers.
Awesome. Can't have enough.
What it's just a strange, non-defined power that could do basically anything you wanted to do at any moment. Like a wizard, maybe, perhaps. All right, let's.
Damon's speech patterns.
I mean, yeah, he talks funny. I thought it was fine. I don't know. I mean, he's like okay character. Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't super in love with him.
What I like is that he's got his own problems. I think that's what I enjoy about him. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoy the world building aspects, of course. But I like that he's having encounters with Trollocs too, which sort of changes the nature of his interaction with them.
Yeah, cool. I guess his story kind of ups that, like, okay, the Dark One is on the march here and is gonna take over. You know,
I feel like it does a lot. Yeah, it makes us think about that. Like the ticking clock is sped up around the world. It makes us wonder, like, why he would be being chased. It makes it to where he believes them, or maybe doesn't blame them as much as somebody else would. And It shows he's got like his own life and his own concerns. So yeah, I think it just does a lot of interesting things here.
Right. So the other thing that was interesting that happens here is that they give up the coins that Moraine gave them. And like, you know, I might just say like, okay, that's then another like little bit of luck. Maybe nothing will come of it, except that he had in a previous chapter, I can't remember which one, but then he had that thought about the coins. Oh, when he was in the city, he like looks at the contents of his pocket and he, you know, has a piece of string and and this coin. And I felt like that was there just to then telegraph to us that this coin exists.
Right.
So something more has to happen. I just have in my mind something more has to happen with this coin. Like maybe this is the way that Moraine can find them or something. I don't know, but it was just like, whoa, why has the coin come up again? It can't be just to pay off this dude. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think it does a couple things. I mean, earlier in this chapter, she does say yet again that she can find them. When they're like, how will we find you? She's like, I'll find you, you know, kind of thing.
Right.
And then I think it's also meant to show that, you know, these kids would not have silver being the country bumpkins that they are. Yeah, I'm not saying that's all it does, of course, right? But it gives a way that they would actually be able to pay for something like this.
Right. So that makes it suspicious in a certain way. So maybe Daman has some other things planned for these stowaways.
We didn't say the question everything. So why not?
All right. Yeah. So I think that's it. Again, he has a lot of thoughts about Egg this chapter. I don't care about Egg, man. I don't care about Egg. But like, I guess I'm supposed to still be holding this flame alive somehow, even though I'm not.
Well, even if we're not shipping them, they could still be buds. They could still be weird. It's true.
Men and women cannot be friends, Jeff. You
know. We're going to go here and it is true. It's not like he's worrying about Perrin that much. But he does seem to feel a responsibility for Egg.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So we'll see what happened to her. Actually, I think of all the people I'm interested in, now I am kind of interested in what happened to her. Oh, and I also thought this was a scam. I remember when they were like running before, like Bella was booking it just as hardcore as anybody else, but then suddenly we go back to Bella being kind of crappy and can't keep up.
I wonder why that would be.
You wonder why? Wait, there should be there's a reason why Bella was rocking before, but she's not now.
It's funny because I had not noticed that change, but I do know that. I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but yeah.
All right.
So I'm actually incredibly glad you brought it up because as soon as you did, I was like, oh. But yeah, so not something you'd really know now.
All right. So I guess I picked up on some, and I guess that's the other like kind of interesting risk of having like these kind of mysteries that when like again it's like okay, it's a clue I guess that I was supposed to notice this or catch this inconsistency, but then how do you stop the reader in the moment just from going, well, like, what the hell, man, like, why is this not consistent? And then like on the hope that they'll forgive you later when you do explain it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's reader trust, right? Like you're building that reader trust sort of early on with little mysteries and reveals, right? So that way when later you hit inconsistencies, you're like, well, I guess that's the same. I guess there's like two main paths you can fall down. Like they made a mistake, right? Mm-hmm. Like they wrote it wrong, the editor they didn't catch it, or there's a reason it's there. And so I think this ties back to actually what you were talking before about training readers, right? Like if you're going to do this, you want to, I think, have some early that then do pay off. And you can be like, oh, I thought as a reader that was an inconsistency, but then I realized that that was purposeful by the author. So then when you hit a later one like this, there's still that trust kind of built in.
All right. Yeah, that's interesting. I also thought like, I was like, oh, damn, we've kind of invested all this time into these horses and they're gone now too. And I was like,
Right.
that's kind of crazy that like Cloud is who knows where. I can only imagine. I mean, we've named this horse. This horse has to be coming back. And so, like, they're gonna just find Cloud like walking along the riverbank or something, and be like, "Oh, there's Cloud." It just like I feel like that has to happen. Like, there can't just be no more Cloud in the rest of the book when we've invested all this time and description into Cloud.
I mean, we've been trained for that, sure, right? That like, someone gets a pet or a horse, they name it, and then it's important, right? Or if it's not, then it doesn't get named. I obviously don't want to say what happens with this one, right? I mean, we talked about Bella before, right?
Yeah.
So that is mild spoiler because they came out with this announcement that they decided to use a different gender for the horse, right? But for the other horses, I can't. Mum's the word I can't say.
All right, all right. So I guess what I reading between the lines of what you're saying, like I should expect more Bella. I maybe should not expect more Cloud.
Well, no,
So,
no. What I'm saying is I agree with you that we have that sort of trained expectation, and I just meant that there's already spoilers that Cloud matters because why would they bother to do this post? But we
uh,
don't know how much other horses is what I meant.
oh, I thought that spoiler was all about Bella. That they changed the gender of Bella.
Right, exactly.
Oh, but they also mentioned Cloud in that.
No, no, I just meant that
Oh, are they
they
combining the horses? Is that what they're doing? So that we
no,
have
no, no, no.
fewer horses?
No, that's that's not what I meant at all. What I just meant was that they bothered to tweet something about Bella, which would seem to indicate that Bella's like important for this story, right?
Right.
Whereas we don't have a tweet about what happened to Cloud.
Right,
So or
exactly.
other persons, right? So like we know this one person is important, but we know them for all of them. Like Mandarb is like talked about a ton too,
Yeah.
Lancers, so for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna maybe prematurely pour one out for Cloud right now. Rip Cloud. It was good to know you. You were always kind of running too fast anyway and messing up. I guess Cloud did get like a chance to shine in this
Yeah,
chapter
no,
when he
Cloud
was
really did in this chapter. Like, no, you're right. I'm glad we're talking about Cloud because Cloud did. Cloud put in the work this chapter. Really running, like, right underneath that tendril, you know what I
It
mean?
was
Like,
Cloud
he's
versus
so
Fog, and Cloud beat Fog in this case.
yes.
So, all right,
Well,
good showing, Cloud.
And next up, we've got Nynaeve.
Nynaeve, let's check in with her, see what she's been doing this whole time, and
Ooh,
we'll see you next week, everybody.
see you then.
Later.